No one to play with? There's always PartyPoker.com where the world plays poker.
You folding?
There's poker action galore here in the boudoir of poker. Chips are a-rifflin', cards are a-pifflin', and we're stepping closer to a $125,000 top prize. Up tonight, a plethora of poker players will have to keep their wits about them, their skills in top form, and take advantage of that little pick of luck around the table. Poker doesn't come much better than this. This is the PartyPoker.com European Open. We've just 2 heats to go till the semifinal stages, and you have to win your table or it's toodaloo and out the door with no money. Joining me is a man who loves a good game of poker, former world snooker champion Steve Davis. And Steve, it's the stages now where you have to win your table. So if you get down to 2, that heads-up stage becomes crucial.
That's right, and there's no prize for second place, so a good heads-up player has a great advantage. At that stage of the tournament, usually the blinds have gone to quite a high level, so there's not necessarily too much room for manoeuvre. The first thing to mention, which is a big change, and some people at home games don't spot, is the fact that the dealer button changes the equation somewhat when it's just heads up. It means the person who deals is the small blind, whereas usually when there's more than 2 players playing, the small blind is to the left of the dealer. So
right.
The small blind would be the dealer, and the big blind would be the person to the left of the dealer, the other guy.
And I mean, usually they say that the dealer always acts last, but actually in heads-up play, before the flop, the dealer acts first, and then last in all subsequent betting rounds.
That's right. That's the big difference there. The other thing to notice, really, is the fact that because there's only 4 cards are going to be dealt, the chances of getting a very good hand are pretty small. So you have to be prepared to be betting and raising with less. Let's just take a quick shuffle and see what cards we get up. Random cards. Okay, the first 4 off the top. Let's see what cards they would be.
Not much.
Well, Queen 10's not too bad, but you'd have to say that's a great hand against Jack 6. So you have to be prepared to start raising and betting with less than you would normally have done.
And I mean, in fact, Queen 10, Jack 6, neither one of them enough to call a huge raise, so you could see a situation where the Jack 6 could end up betting this Queen 10 out of the pot. It's really about guts and gusto.
Exactly, and of course by this time of the tournament, the heat certainly, you should have picked up some sort of feeling from your opponent what type of player he is, if he's got any tells. And obviously this can be very important when somebody's lying or bluffing, so if you can get a tell on somebody by the end of the heat, then that's very, very crucial.
Well, there's one guy who knows quite a lot about heads-up play. In fact, the only time he's ever lost head-to-head is against the mirror on the wall, former world champion Phil Hellmuth.
Heads up is a totally different animal. The value of the hands changes dramatically. A lot of times when I play heads up, and I've just won a couple of big heads up tournaments, what I do is I let the other player dictate the pace. I kind of sit back and play conservatively and wait to see what they're going to do. Sometimes I trap them. A lot of times I'll trap them. I might have 2 jacks, I'll just call. I'm not trying to win all their chips in this hand. I'm trying to just take a nice bite out of them, a nice dent out of them with the 2 jacks. On the other hand, if I'm going to slow play it, I want to make sure that I don't lose all of my chips in this hand. So when I play heads up, if they're playing super fast and raising a lot, then I kind of just sit back. If they're playing really patient, I kind of sit back. I let them dictate the pace and play off of whatever they're doing.
Well, Hellmuth talking there about letting other players dictate the pace. I mean, I guess that's down to that he reads players so well, Steve, but it seems that aggression wins the day in the end.
Yes, for us mere mortals, I think when you get some good cards, you want to go with them. But obviously at the level he's at, he probably can read the people and the cards better than we can.
Some great readers in the game tonight, some big uns at the table. Let's see who'll be sitting down. that's the lineup. Pretty tough, and one of the favorites tonight. We're lucky to have him here, Roy the Boy Brindley. Roy, this format, this one-table, six-seater, you've pretty much made it your own. You feel very comfortable in there.
Not particularly, I've got to say. I probably do prefer more conventional tournaments where we stay 10-handed, but you've got to play these games for what they are. And, you know, the blinds go up quite rapidly. Ideally, you know, for me, I think I'd be happier if players were eliminated early rather than we're still left with 6 players and the blinds are high, because there's far more randomness comes involved in it. But you've got to play it as a strategy. Keep an eye on the average chips, how many players are remaining, your stack in relation to the average chips, and beaver away.
You've played plenty of tournaments to the latter stages, heads up. 2 questions for me. A, you've watched a lot of tournament TV poker, and also, should you practice heads up?
It's very easy to say, oh, heads up, you should always raise if you've got a queen or higher and you should do this and do that. It's very simple to just be so practical. But if you're playing poker well, at the highest level, you need to watch every move every player does from the outset. You often see people walk in, sit down, talking away. Did you see the races today? What about the football? This. In the meantime, the game's going on. And they're not picking up tells on people. They're not getting some idea of people. Someone shows a hand. They need to know what that hand was. They need to pay 100% attention. And you've really got to, by the time you get to a final table, you've got to play the player. Instead of case saying raise with every hand, if this guy's a nut, he's going to re-raise with nothing every time, you don't want to be raising into a nothing. You know, that's a suicide note. You want to play the people what they are. If it's a guy that will let you trap him, you trap him. If it's a guy who lays down to aggression, you play aggressive, and vice versa. So I don't think, personally, to have any sort of formula to beat someone at a final table of a tournament may be different in an absolute head-to-head game. But at the final table of a tournament, when the blinds are relatively high, you need to play the person and not necessarily the cards, him, his stack. It's all about playing the person.
Well, I mean, Steve, you're asking Roy about heads-up playing. Fair enough. I mean, Roy, second in the world heads-up. But if I'm not mistaken, you two did play heads-up a few years ago, and Steve, I think you came out on top.
Well, I don't want to say that our only meeting was in my favour. I call it beginner's luck, but Roy took it well. He slept like a baby that night. He just woke up screaming every hour. It was good fun for me, but you've played lots of heads-up. You know what can go wrong as well.
No, that occasion there, for example, the blinds were massive, weren't they? And I'm just basically, I shut my eyes and said all in and hoped you didn't have a hand, and twice you had a hand, and c'est la vie. Again, classic example there, you know, when the blinds are big, you know, you can't lay down to a re-raise, so you might as well go all in. You know, that's the bottom line. And if your opponent wakes up with the hands, you know, you're done for, but there's not much more you can do. So like I say, ideally, in this kind of format, you know, in a perfect world, people will be eliminated early and there'll be plenty of play left, and when you're heads up or three-handed, you know, you can limp into pots and see flops and hopefully outplay your opponents.
Everyone's at the table. Keep your eyelashes steady. Steve Davis and myself will be joining the action right after this.
No one to play with? There's always PartyPoker.com.
Are you ready? We are. Steve Davis and myself will be guiding you through as soon as the cards hit the floor.
Blinds of 1 in 2,000. I don't think Tony Hughes has moved a chip yet. Just been very neat and tuck.
Pass. Pass. Pass.
And folded around to the button.
Oh.
Danny's been playing a few hands. Nothing wrong with playing that, although he was first into the pot, so I think he could have perhaps even raised with the ace-7, should he have so wished.
Cool.
It would certainly have frozen out
Raise.
Simon Zach, but it wouldn't have frozen out Darren Tweedy, who's got those kings again.
That's the
10,000
second
total.
round he's
Total.
had the 2 kings in the big blind.
The 8th hand. He gets kings once every 4 hands. It's one of his big advantages in his game.